Hello, Sagittarius. I almost don't know where to start with this one. And I say that not as a dramatic opener designed to pull you in. I say it because it's genuinely true. When I tuned into your energy for this reading, what came through wasn't a slow, gradual build of impressions the way it usually does. It hit me almost immediately, fully formed, with a force and a clarity that honestly made me stop and sit with it for a moment before I could even begin to put words around it. Because what's forming in your life right now, what's already moving toward you, already assembling itself in the invisible space just ahead of your current reality, is something I genuinely did not expect to find in this particular reading. And it is going to make you so deeply, genuinely happy. Not relieved, not just grateful. Actually, fully, in your whole chest happy. The kind of happy you might have forgotten was available to you, if you're being completely honest with yourself. The kind that was present at certain points earlier in your life, in moments where everything aligned and the world felt generous and easy and full of possibility, and that has been harder to access lately for reasons you know better than anyone. That specific quality of happiness is what's forming around you right now. And I want to spend this entire reading walking you through what it is, why it's arriving now, and how to make sure you are completely, fully open when it gets here. But first, take a breath with me, slowly in and out, because I want you present for every part of this. Not half in this reading and half in whatever thought or worry was on your mind before you clicked. Fully here. Because what I'm about to describe deserves your full attention, and you deserve to actually feel it rather than passively listen while your mind is elsewhere. Are you with me? Good. Let's go. Let me start by telling you something about the quality of what I'm sensing, because I think it's the most important place to begin. Most of what comes through in readings has a quality of expectedness to it, not because the thing is predictable, but because when I sense it forming, it fits. It makes sense in the context of the person's situation, their patterns, the direction their energy has been moving. There's a logic to it, even when it's good news, even when it's something the person has been hoping for. What I'm sensing around you doesn't entirely fit that pattern. What I mean by that is this: whatever is forming in your life right now, it carries a quality of exceeding what you've been allowing yourself to hope for, exceeding the particular ceiling you've unconsciously placed on your own expectations, exceeding the version of good that you've been quietly bargaining with when you think about what's realistic versus what you actually want. It's bigger than the version you've been permitting yourself to fully want. I want to stay with that word exceeding for a moment, because I think it deserves more than a passing mention. We all develop expectation ceilings over time, usually without realizing we've done it. They form through a kind of accumulated calibration. Each time something didn't quite arrive at the level we'd hoped, the ceiling drops slightly. After enough of those adjustments, we're hoping for a fraction of what we originally wanted, telling ourselves we're being realistic, when actually we've just been quietly trained by disappointment to ask for less than what we deserve. I sense that your ceiling has moved down over recent chapters. Not dramatically, you haven't lost hope entirely, which is part of why I'm sensing what I'm sensing around you right now. But there's a gap between what you're currently allowing yourself to want and what's actually forming. And that gap is significant. And I think that's exactly why I find myself temporarily at a loss for words when I look at it, because this isn't what most people get. This is the version that happens when all the conditions align in a way they don't always align, when someone's readiness meets the right moment, meets the right energy. When the universe, for lack of a better word, decides to be generous in a way that isn't just adequate. That's what I'm looking at when I look at your energy right now. Do you have a sense, even a small, quiet one, that you might not have fully let yourself acknowledge that something remarkable is forming around you? I'd love to hear about that in the comments, because I think a lot of you already feel this in some wordless way, and sometimes naming it is actually part of bringing it closer. Now let me try to describe what this happiness is actually going to feel like when it arrives, because I think that matters not just what it is, but how it lands. The particular quality of joy I keep sensing around this arrival is the kind that comes with a moment of sudden, complete clarity, not a gradual, dawning realization, not something that gets better and better over several weeks as it slowly sinks in. An actual moment, a specific, identifiable point in time where you go from before to after in what feels like a single breath. One moment your life looks the way it's been looking, and in the next moment, everything you thought you understood about the near future has changed. Not because something bad happened, because something better than what you planned for arrived instead. I keep being shown the image of someone stepping out of a long, narrow corridor into an open field, not gradually widening, like a slowly opening door, actually stepping out one step, and then suddenly sky in every direction. After being surrounded by walls for long enough that you forgot what unobstructed sky looked like, that first step into open space produces a very specific, almost overwhelming sensation. That's the feeling I'm associating with what's coming for you. Not incremental, not gradual, a step, and then suddenly everything is open. Let me talk about what kind of happiness this is, because I'm sensing a few different threads, and I want you to notice which one your heart moves toward first. For some of you, this happiness is rooted in something finally, resolving something that has been uncertain, in flux, unfinished for far too long, suddenly arriving at exactly the conclusion you needed. The happiness here isn't just about the outcome itself. It's about the enormous relief of the uncertainty finally ending, of being able to stop holding two possible futures in your mind simultaneously, the one where things work out and the one where they don't, and being able to put both of those down and simply live in the reality of things, having worked out. If you've been living in that exhausting bilateral state, what's coming takes you out of it completely. For others, the happiness I'm sensing is connected to something genuinely new, not the resolution of something old, but the arrival of something that didn't exist in your life before in any form, something that expands your world rather than simply healing a wound in it. This could be a person, an opportunity, a creative breakthrough, a sudden opening in a direction you've always wanted to go but couldn't quite find the entrance to. The happiness here has a freshness to it, a lightness, something that makes you feel like a version of yourself you haven't visited in a while, curious, excited, genuinely interested in what comes next, rather than simply hoping to get through it. And for a third group of you, what I'm sensing has a quality of unexpected recognition, something arriving that doesn't just improve your circumstances, but actually sees you, acknowledges you in a specific, detailed, undeniable way that you haven't been acknowledged in longer than you realized. Someone or something that looks at the particular texture of who you are and responds to that specifically, rather than to a generalized version of a person in your position. That kind of being truly seen is its own profound category of happiness. And for someone who's been feeling invisible or undervalued for a long stretch, it can be more moving than almost any practical change in circumstances. Which of these resonates most deeply right now? Let me know in the comments, because the specific thread that's pulling at you is where this happiness is most actively forming in your actual life. Now, I want to say something about why this particular level of happiness is arriving now and not earlier. I've noticed something consistent in readings like this one, the kind where something truly exceptional is forming around someone. And it's this. The people who receive this level of unexpected, exceeding happiness are almost never people who have had easy, smooth lives up to the point it arrives. They're people who've been through something, who've been tested in specific ways that carved something in them, a depth, a patience, an appreciation for the good that can only come from having genuinely known its absence. You can't fake that. You can't acquire it through any route other than actually living through the difficult chapters. You've lived through yours, and there is something in the universe, call it energy, call it timing, call it the natural consequence of who you've become through everything you've survived, that responds to that, not by making you pay for happiness with suffering as if there's a transaction involved, but because the version of you who exists right now, shaped by everything you've navigated, is genuinely capable of receiving something at this level, of holding it, of appreciating it all the way down to its real depth, rather than skimming across the surface of it. The you from 3 years ago or 5 years ago might have received the same thing and moved through it more lightly, more quickly, without fully inhabiting what it meant. The you right now is going to feel it all the way through. That's not a consolation prize for the difficulty. That's an honest description of what difficulty actually builds in people who go through it without becoming bitter. A capacity for depth of feeling. A genuine appreciation for ease and joy that people who've never had to go without them simply don't have in the same form. When this happiness arrives for you, and it is arriving, the specific quality of your relationship with it is going to be richer than a casual observer would understand. Not louder, necessarily, but deeper, truer, more saturating. That is yours specifically because of everything that formed you getting here. That's not a coincidence. That's the specific timing of this arrival being exactly what it needed to be. Let's talk about timing in a more practical sense, because I know it's where your mind wants to go. The energy I'm sensing doesn't feel distant. It doesn't have the quality of something that's still in early formation, still years away from becoming visible. What I'm picking up feels close in a way that's already creating that low-level alertness. I mentioned earlier that heightened attention, that slight quickening when something unexpected appears at the edge of your awareness. For some of you, the very first signal of this may have already shown up quietly in a form you might not have recognized as the beginning of something as significant as it actually is. Keep that in mind as you move through the coming days. The first sign of something remarkable doesn't always look remarkable when it arrives. For others, this feels like something that's still assembling itself, just around the bend, all the pieces present and moving into position, but the full picture not quite visible yet. A week, 2 weeks, maybe a little longer for a small number of you, but the trajectory is clear and it's pointing somewhere that didn't look reachable from where you were standing not long ago. There's one more thing about timing I want to mention, because it's something I sense matters specifically for you. The moment this happiness arrives, I want you to actually stop what you're doing. Not figuratively, literally. Whatever task you're in the middle of, whatever distraction was running in the background of your day, I want you to set it down and be fully present with the moment. We have a deeply ingrained habit, especially those of us who've spent long stretches in survival mode, of immediately thinking about what comes next, even while something good is happening right now. The tendency to arrive somewhere wonderful and immediately start asking what to do about it, rather than simply being in it for a moment first. Don't do that with this. Let yourself have the moment before the moment becomes a plan. I want to address something that I think is quietly running underneath all of this for some of you. And I want to address it directly because I think leaving it unspoken would do you a disservice. There's a part of some of you that is going to hear everything in this reading and, rather than simply feeling hopeful and open, is going to feel a strange kind of sadness alongside the hope. A preemptive grief, almost. Something like, what if I believe this and it doesn't happen? The particular pain of hope disappointed has made certain people into very careful hopers, people who've learned to stay near the exit when something sounds too good, so the walkout doesn't hurt as much if it comes to that. If that's you, I'm not going to tell you to simply turn that off. You developed it for real reasons, and it's been protecting you in its way. What I'm going to say instead is this. That voice, the one that wants to stay near the exit, was formed in response to a pattern. But patterns change. And the energy I'm sensing around you right now is genuinely different from the pattern that voice was formed in response to. You don't have to believe me completely. You don't have to throw the door wide open all at once. But can you just lean toward it, even slightly? Can you let the possibility be a little more real in your body than it usually allows itself to be? That small shift, the willingness to lean in just a fraction more than usual, is actually part of what allows this to reach you fully when it arrives. I also want to acknowledge something that takes real courage and that doesn't always get named directly in readings like this one. Allowing yourself to be fully happy, not guardedly happy, not cautiously hopeful, but genuinely, expansively, arms open, happy, is an act of vulnerability. Because happiness that's felt completely is also happiness that can be lost, and some part of us knows that. The more completely we let ourselves have something, the more there is to lose. So we hedge. We half receive. We hold back 20% of our happiness as insurance against the day it might be taken away. I want to gently invite you to not do that with this. Whatever arrives, let it be yours completely. Feel it all the way down. The insurance you've been maintaining by holding back your full happiness hasn't actually protected you from pain. It's only reduced the height of your joy. And this arrival deserves your full height. Let's go deeper now into what I think is the most important layer of this entire reading. I keep sensing something around this happiness that goes beyond the event itself, a quality of arrival, not just of the specific good thing, but of something larger, as if what's coming is not just the happiness itself, but the opening of a season of life where happiness becomes more accessible than it's been. Where good things arriving isn't a shocking anomaly requiring intense analysis and cautious interpretation, but something that starts to feel more normal, more expected, more like the baseline of what your life looks like. That might sound too large a claim, and I want to be honest, I can't promise you a permanently charmed existence, because that isn't how life works for any human being, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. What I can say is that there's a threshold quality to what's forming, something that once crossed tends to stay crossed. Once your experience of your own life updates to include this kind of unexpected, exceeding happiness as something that has actually happened to you, not theoretically, not aspirationally, but actually in your real lived life, something in your expectations updates permanently. And from that updated baseline, more good things tend to follow. Not because of magic, but because expectation shapes, perception shapes, action shapes, outcome. The cycle starts here, with this thing forming in front of you right now. I want to add one more thought here, because I think it needs to be said plainly before we close. The word speechless in the title of this reading isn't just a hook. It's the honest description of what I encounter when I look at your energy and where it's heading. Some readings feel steady and grounded and quiet. Some feel urgent. Some feel heavy with complexity. Yours right now feels like something I genuinely didn't expect to walk into when I tuned in a brightness that, honestly, stopped me for a second. That experience of being briefly stopped by something good is rare enough that I want you to know it happened. Because whatever is forming around you, it's significant enough to be visible from where I'm standing. And that matters. And now, as we arrive at the final part of this reading, I want to leave you with something that I hope carries past the moment you finish watching or listening. Everything in this reading has been pointing toward one simple, essential truth. Something is coming for you that is genuinely, truly, completely going to make you happy. Not in the managed, careful way you've learned to accept things that are good but not quite enough. Not in the this is fine, this will do way of someone who's learned to calibrate their expectations downward to protect themselves. But in the full, real, breath-catching way that reminds you why you stayed hopeful when there wasn't much reason to. Why you kept going when stopping would have been the easier choice. Why you showed up day after day to your own life with enough care and enough willingness to still be moved by what was possible, even when what was actual felt far from it. This is what that persistence looks like when it pays. This is where that chapter was taking you. So here is what I want you to hold as this reading closes. Stay open. Don't let the part of you that's learned to preempt disappointment talk you into keeping your guard up for this particular arrival. Let yourself want this fully, not quietly, not carefully, not with one eye already on the exit, fully. The version of happiness approaching you can handle being wanted that completely. In fact, it's been designed by everything you've lived through to get here, to be received in exactly that way. And when it arrives in whatever form, through whatever door, wearing whatever face, I want you to do one thing above all others. Pause. Put everything else down for one moment and let yourself actually feel it, not the analysis of it, not the planning of what it means for what comes next, not the instinct to immediately tell someone else before you fully inhabited it yourself. Just the feeling, just the happiness, landing in your chest, real and undeniable and yours. Give it at least that one moment of being fully received before the world starts weighing in. You have spent a long time being patient, being steady, being the version of yourself who handles what needs to be handled and keeps going even when the going was harder than it should have been. This arrival is for that version of you. It's the answer to the question you stopped asking out loud, because asking it had started to hurt the one that goes quietly in the back of the mind at 2 a.m. When is it my turn? The answer is coming. And when it gets here, it is going to make you so completely, entirely happy. Drop a comment below and tell me, honestly, what would make you genuinely, completely, breath-catchingly happy right now? What's the thing you've been almost afraid to want fully because wanting it completely felt too risky? Say it, even if just in a comment, because I think putting it into words might surprise you with how close it already is. If this reading moved something in you, stay close to this channel, because the energy I'm reading around your life right now is alive and building, and I want to keep speaking into it as it continues to develop. For now, just breathe and let yourself, quietly but completely, believe that something extraordinary is on its way to you. Not because you've been promised a perfect life, because you've earned the right to a genuinely joyful chapter, and this is the one that's beginning